was asked if I would do a service in advance of Indigenous Peoples' Day. For me, this is a time of reflecting on the dark history of white colonial settler entitlement and disregard for those who have called this place home for thousands of years. I'm led to ponder what our lives might be like if instead of displacing, killing, and attempting to destroy all aspects of Indigenous culture, we had sought to learn from them. What if we had listened to the wisdom of the Indigenous peoples of this land? There have been 3 threads that have woven themselves together over the last year that have led me to think seriously about these questions. I'll try to share them with you. First, my favorite among our old UU principles was always respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. With our new version, this becomes the UU shared value of interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence with reverence for the great web of life, and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. We don't usually say the rest on Sundays, but it continues. We covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships. This is definitely longer and more complex than the simple image of the web, but bear with me because this addition is important to where we're headed. Second, I discovered a personal story that made me listen more soberly to our land acknowledgement. While going through some family papers, I discovered that in 1713, Jonas Rice, who was my 6th great-grandfather, and his family became the first permanent white settlers in what was to become Worcester, Massachusetts. Within 5 years, they and other families who joined them had built 58 houses, a garrison, and a church. That church became the first Unitarian Church of Worcester, where members of my family have worshiped for generations. The reality is that my ancestors took land from the Indigenous people of that area known as the Nipmuc, and a UU church sits on that land today. Within that context, I'll reread to you our full land acknowledgement. We honor the history of the land on which our building sits, the land of the Mohican Nation, particularly in this area, communities known as Housatonic, and then Stockbridge Mohicans. After the Revolutionary War, local Mohican land was stolen by white settlers in what became Great Barrington and Stockbridge. Much, but not all, of the tribe left the area, settling first on Oneida land in New York State, and then were moved to Wisconsin, forming the Stockbridge-Munsee Band of Mohicans. We acknowledge the painful history of the Mohican Nation dispossession and honor the ongoing connection of the Stockbridge-Munsee Band of Mohicans to these lands and waters. We pay honor and respect to their ancestors past and present as we commit to building a more inclusive and equitable space for all. The third strand began when Lev Natan from Alliance for a Viable Future asked if our congregation would like to send a representative to the Berkshire Climate Leadership Collaborative to work together with members of other area groups toward climate resilience and stability for our region. Our Social Justice Committee had already been involved in some other climate initiatives, and I knew Lev from his work on area Indigenous Peoples' Day events. So I agreed to be UUMSB's representative to this group. One thing became clear early on in our group discussions. If we were serious about addressing climate change, we would need to change how we think about our relationship with the earth. For our purposes this morning, let's first take a moment to look at how we got to the situation we're currently in. Acclaimed Native American author Vin Deloria Jr., in his book, God is Red, suggests that our Western worldview about the environment stems from the Protestant religion of our forebears, which focused on man and his relationship to God. Our surroundings are secondary and generally considered to have been placed there by God for the benefit of man. Hear that as Protestant white man. This encourages a sense of entitlement and lack of responsibility for our connection to the well-being of other creatures, plants, or Mother Earth herself. In the end, we use what we want, waste and destroy, and find ourselves with the climate crisis and loss of plants and animals integral to the web of life. With Lev's connections to and understanding of an Indigenous worldview, he encouraged our climate group to look at our work through this lens. In contrast to our Western perspective, the Indigenous view is one of deep connection to the environment, thriving on respect for life and all living things, and based in a sense of responsibility to all that surrounds us. One doesn't own things, which implies control over. One stewards, which implies taking care of and helping to flourish. One only takes what one needs and gives back in some way as a measure of showing gratitude and assuring enough for others and future generations. Wealth is not measured by what one owns or accumulates, rather by what one gives away. This implies not only a strong relationship between individuals, but also between humans and the land. God, rather than manifesting as an anthropomorphic being, manifests in the trees, the water, the wind. Places are sacred not just because an event happened there, but because of the people's deep connection to that place over long spans of time. So, what if my ancestors, instead of building a garrison, had acknowledged that they, as the newcomers, might stand to learn something from the people who had called that place home long before they arrived? What if the experiment in coexistence at Indian Town in Stockbridge had included white settlers adopting Indigenous spiritual ways instead of requiring the Stockbridge Mohicans to convert to Christianity? We can't go back and relive history, but we can allow it to inform how we go forward. If we look at our relationship to the earth and all other beings through an Indigenous lens, we may be able to do better, not only with climate change, as Lev Natan suggests, but also with how we relate to everything and everyone around us. Unfortunately, we as Unitarian Universalists have a framework to guide us. We do have Protestant roots and are surrounded by that culture. While we do have Protestant roots and are surrounded by that culture, we also have a broader base of wisdom and teaching that we draw from. including the words of Indigenous leaders, which ground us in our connection to all that surrounds us. We find this wisdom scattered throughout our hymns and readings, some of which I've included in today's service. It is most evident in our UU shared value of interdependence and the covenant that follows. Let me read that to you again. We honor the interdependent web of all existence with reverence for the great web of life, and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. We covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships. The last sentence of our land acknowledgement echoes this. We pay honor and respect to their ancestors, past and present, as we commit to building a more inclusive and equitable space for all. This is not only an acknowledgement, it is a call to action. So, how do we respond? Two possibilities emerge. One is to continue to learn about and live into a more Indigenous worldview. For many of us, this will involve becoming more aware of our own culturally ingrained perspectives, biases, and views on relationship, as well as learning new information. The book Becoming Kin by Patty Krawiec was suggested as a possible shared read by one of my Climate Collaborative colleagues. The other perhaps parallel path is to humbly seek ways to build positive relationships with the Stockbridge-Munsee when they travel back here to their homeland, both to repair past harm and to move forward with mutual respect for each other and the land that we share. The Indigenous Peoples Day Walk on Sunday, October 13th is a place to start. Families will be coming from Wisconsin back home for this event. We can show our support by attending this event and welcoming them home. Over time, perhaps we can ask what they would like from us. Who speaks for the tribe? How can we build some sense of trust that we, unlike my ancestors, want to listen and learn? I invite us all to work together toward the answers. We owe it to our shared future in the interdependent web of life.